an interesting day today. I think we're going to try to do something a little bit different. I was thinking we could basically, people were asking a few different things. They were asking how to learn openings, and then how to play the Italian game, and then how to do pawn storms in the Sicilian. So that's a pretty complicated set of questions. I guess I'm really happy to give it a shot. But yeah, there's many different ways that even very high-level players go about doing this. There's no uniform way of, learning or opening theory well. Chess tempo, I was saying, has base. So in terms of learning openings, I tried to prepare a little bit for this. There's a tool that I thought was kind of interesting from Chess Tempo. And basically on Chess Tempo, what you can do is, plug in what you want to be an opening theory, what you want to be your opening theory, and it'll just basically test you on the playback. That's the Chess Tempo openings trainer. But I think mainly there, what it's going to be doing is looking at, basically your theory, your memorized theory versus the computer is basically how that game ends up playing out. And I think that there's some value to that, and especially at a really high level, grandmaster level, probably the memorization of 20 moves of theory is very helpful. But basically the fundamental concepts in the openings I think are much more important. The opening book that I would recommend, and I referenced it on here a lot, is Ideas Behind the Chess Openings by Fine. I think that's a great book. It will read like a book, and it'll explain kind of what's going on in each of the openings. But in terms of developing an opening repertoire, I'd go much more with conceptual understanding and much less with, memorization. People like to memorize long lists of opening moves, but I don't think that's the most efficient way to go. In terms of, learning openings, you're basically going to have to come up with responses for a few different main things. So I just wanted to go through because I wanted to, see if I could come up with a complete list. Basically, if you're playing white and you play e4, you have to deal with c5, d5, and e5. So on basically e4, you have to look at c5, d5, e5, potentially d6, and potentially knight f6, and potentially g6. Other than that, there aren't that many alternatives that black plays here. But basically, memorizing this set of moves and coming up with reasonable responses to each of them is probably a good idea. On the other side, what you see out of d4 most frequently is d5. You also see knight f6. You also basically you see d4, d5, d4, d5, c5, knight f6. E6 potentially, but there's really kind of a finite number of moves that your opponent can play. These are generally grouped into like main openings. They all have their own specific names and then sub variations. I mean, people get very into this kind of concept of naming things, but overall it's very interesting, and I think ends up playing out pretty well for, and basically it plays out in a relatively interesting way for white again. Basically, when you're assembling an opening theory, an opening theory set, it's relatively finite number of things that you need to memorize, but you basically need to know conceptually how to play each of the openings. The ideas, so on e4, these are e4, e5 is an open game. e4, anything except for e4 is a semi-opening game, and d4, d5 is a closed game. This doesn't literally end up being the case, but it does often end up being, it does often end up being a good way to, classify openings. The d4 openings in general are more closed. The e4 openings in general are more open. And with d4, d5 here, you look at responses like c4, c6. Basically, you end up with a situation in which you have a relatively solid, basically you come up with a solid idea, but you are kind of subject to the way that the game is steered. In terms of advancing this, I guess, I don't know, ideas, e4, basically you need to learn more tactical play. d4, you need to learn more positional play. And basically, I think, What I've found to be the most successful way to learn chess openings in the big picture is experience. I think basically, experience is a good guidance of what comes up the most frequently. An idea that I had kind of relatively early on was just play 100 blitz or bullet games, or even just take the repertoire that you have now, and see what your opponents are playing and what they're playing the most frequently. If there are particular areas in which you're running into openings that you're not familiar with, change those. Try to, hey, thank you very much for the follow, Bilbo. Appreciate it. So yeah, I guess I would say that the most important things, in following a chess opening are probably, coming up with the larger concepts of what happens the most frequently. This book, Ideas Behind the Chess Openings by Fine, is probably a good way to do it. There's also there's other opportunities that could be helpful there. Ideas, I guess, I don't know. Go with E4. I mean, basically, what is coming up the most frequently. You can go through and learn a specific opening and learn the intricacies of it better and worse. You can learn things beyond kind of the superficial understanding that, okay, the Sicilian's an attacking opening, E4, E5 is relatively symmetrical and open position. But in terms of actually coming up with a way of learning the openings, I would just take 100 games that you've played. So go on chess.com, Lead Chess, or whatever your preferred website is, and just go through the games that you've played. And in areas where you've received a bad evaluation by move 10, go back and redo those. Try to figure out where the opening went wrong. In this vein, I think I can do this for the games that I played today. I've got some, I played a few games today. They were bullet games. I tried to play theory in bullet games. I haven't always tried to play theory in bullet games, but it tends to actually be, sort of helpful, and it is actually good. If you can play the theory quick enough, it leads you to some pretty good positions. Yeah, no, for sure. No, and it's a really good question, Johemian. Thank you very much for asking it. So I guess I would say you have a bunch of resources available to you. You have things that include you basically have all the resources on Chess Tempo. So Chess Tempo, Chess Openings Trainer, that could be good. You have you basically have the full database available on chess.com. You have individual standalone programs that could be helpful. And I think basically, you're in a pretty good place to learn theory. Some masters go online and post videos on YouTube about theory. That's an approach. I think that could be helpful. But basically, you've isolated the problem specifically, so we can go through and look at that. I can't remember the ECO codes, and maybe I can't do it in a more streamlined way, but I was going to try to pull up, just go through my opening theory for today. So let's look at something like this. And who missteps out of theory first. So basically this is straightforward. Knight c3, d5, and then here, g3. So g3 is a less commonly played move. Black has many different transpositions. d5 is fine. Bishop g2, castles, c6. And just basically go through, try to play opening theory, try to play things that are consistent, but basically try to come up with an idea that, look at your past games and see where the divergences in theory are. I say use your past games because I think that's the thing that's going to be the most practically useful for you. Basically, if you've played the game, you know that others have played that game before, so you might as well just go through c6, e6, those types of things, in this position. Is it better to play c6 or e6? Well, this is a very practical position. This is a game that was played, and c6 is better. And sort of by this process of building on yourself and process of elimination, you have a better and better chance of establishing what opening lines you'd like to play. You also have the assistance of, the engine. If there's a big misstep either in or out of theory, then you can make changes to what you're doing. Sometimes basically I think that when you're playing out a game like this, The scenario that's probably going to be the most helpful for you is if you look at something like, not to pick on a specific thing, but if you look at like a Stafford Gambit, like you can look at that opening theory and say, all right, well, that objectively was just not a very good, it does have a few games in the opening book, so that's not where it falls short, but it basically falls, from a computer evaluation perspective. So what I would look at is look through your past games and then use both the opening book and the yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, yeah, if you want to try a new thing, then the quickest thing for that is basically something along the same basically along the same vein, Johemian. Hey, welcome, FIFA boy. Thank you for joining the stream. But yeah, I think it's basically the same concept. I would go so say, it's good to have kind of a good understanding of what type of game you would like to play. Like, say you want to play an attacking game, then you can play the Sicilian. Or you want to play an unorthodox but probably solid game, you can play the Scandinavian. And then if you want to play, you can learn the characteristics of the French and the Caro-Kann. E4, E5 is normally an open game. It's pretty much, with E4, E5, basically, you're getting a position where there's going to be open lines of attack, and threats are going to be, basically threats. It's a highly tactical game with a lot of open lines. That would be the, the main point of, like the E4, E5 openings. So that's what they're referred to. The open games are E4, E5, semi-open are E4 and then something else, and then closed games are D4, D5. If you want to play a different opening, I guess I would say search the internet or do a little bit of research on what tends to be the best, what tends to be the best idea for, basically what tends to be the general concept of that opening, and then just play it. Say you don't know the Caro-Kann. So if I don't know the Caro-Kann, I know it is white. So I know how to play it as white, but I don't know exactly how to play it as black. So let's just say I'm just gonna make random moves here, or moves that look vaguely correct to me, and we'll see where I went wrong. So knight f3, bishop to g4, bishop to say f4, d6. And then I can go through this theory, and using the eval and using the opening book, I can tell where the issue is. So here we've stepped into a line where there's really only one game left that's been played in this way. I wonder if bishop f4 was the deviation, but if I go through the opening theory here, then at least I'll know objectively where it is. So c6, and then here, d4, knight f6, is so here d5 was played, knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, bishop g4, and I can see that basically I've played relatively mainline moves here. The move that I played that was the most common was d5. Knight c3 was played. That is not the most common. And then the most common move here is d takes e4. I didn't play d takes e4. I played knight f6. So if I want to establish, if I see I'm playing something that's outside of the main theory, so I want to check two things. I want to check what the main theory is, just so I know it. It's pawn takes e4. And then I want to also look at this opening and say, all right, well, how much different is knight f6 versus d takes e4? They look like they're not too distant, but d takes e4 is slightly better, and given that it's the main line, you play d takes e4. D takes e4, knight takes e4, things are fine. So that basically is a kind of process by elimination in terms of how to refine your opening lines. I don't know of a better theory than that. You can read books, you can do a lot of kind of independent research, but I think doing a live analysis of both the engine line and the opening book line is probably going to be the most helpful in establishing what to do. But yeah, that's my, I guess that's my recommendation on how to learn openings. Pick an opening that you like from the fundamentals that you know about it. So say specifically you need an attacking opening, so start playing the Sicilian. And even if you're doing a trial run, these are just blitz games on the internet, so it doesn't really matter. You're doing a trial run of the Sicilian, you want an attacking opening, so start playing, play 10 games out of the Sicilian and then use this method to kind of go through and learn, both what the main lines are and if you're making or if you're making moves that are objectively not the best. I think that's probably the best modern way to go about it, but others may have different strategies. This will catch a lot of missteps. You'll end up at the point where, if you're going about this method, you'll have memorized the most common lines, and then you can go back and say, all right, well, this is this line seemed bad. First, is it objectively bad, and then check the analysis, and then also if you feel like you were lost out of an opening, then you can just go back and take a look. It's really this is again something that you probably couldn't do in terms of prep 20 years ago, but now you have the tools to do it. So I would highly recommend making this your kind of modern strategy, modern approach to learning openings. But yeah, just keep playing, and then use very practical examples of what you're seeing and what you're facing to try to broaden your opening knowledge in general. That's what I would recommend. Hey, Ahmet, how's it going? How are you? But yeah, it's basically about it. My idea is basically, if you see something that's inferior, try to make it so that it's your opponent that makes the first move out of book or first errant move. If you go through and do this exercise enough, I think you'll be successful at identifying where the shortcomings in your opening theory knowledge are. Both by what's popular and what's objectively good or bad based on the engine. Engine's not perfect, especially in the openings, but it generally tends to be fairly solid. So yeah, I gave an example. I picked out my game, and it basically, you can go through you can go through any arbitrary game and see where the thing is. But yeah, it's cool. We're working on we're working on it. I try not to focus on the I really appreciate you guys being here, but what the biggest goal for me is to get as much free chess material to everyone as possible. So I really appreciate all of you guys, and I appreciate everyone working on putting together some followers. It's great. I love having more people here as opposed to less. It's great to see everyone. But my goal really is to make sure that chess lessons are free to everyone, regardless of financial situation. I think we really can do this with computers, and that's the goal. So I'm very happy about the follower number, but at the same time, and I think we should push forward and try to get more and more followers. But really, it's mostly about making sure that this knowledge is free and available, and that everyone who wants it has it, regardless of who they are or where they're from. And I think that's the goal of this stream in general. So. Very happy about the follower number, it's good. To recognize that things seem to be going well, but yeah, really just want to make sure that chess lessons are free for everyone, and that's why I'm here. Anyways, in terms of learning chess openings, that's the method I would use. You take your old games from chess.com or Lichess, and then compare them to the engine and the database. And then anytime you are making an error, acknowledge it. You could probably write it down. Or on the other hand, if your opponent makes an error, you can take a look at the engine and see how best that line could be exploited. So that's my recommendation there. I think I would say, that's my idea on learning openings. You could also ask me to go through it. I'm always happy to take a slot and give opening theory. Here I have two more openings coming right up. I have the Italian game, and then I wanted to specifically focus on the pawn storming that you can do out of the Sicilian. But with all those, I think it's really a great idea, and I think I think going through manually in that way. Yeah, sure. So all right. So in your specific situation, Johemian, what I would do is I would basically I completely understand, and I think that's a good that's a good choice. I mean, if you don't feel like playing the Sicilian anymore, so what I would do is probably I guess play, say 10, 15 games out of the Sicilian. So, you don't get the Sicilian every time, and your opponent doesn't play e4 every time. So that probably ends up being, play 50, 60 games in total. And then just go through and see, was this. You don't really even need, an opening book, to be honest. You can just sort of go through this process of learning like what works and what doesn't work based on the engine and the opening book analysis. So yeah, that's what I would recommend, Johemian, and yeah, seems like a good project. So yeah, e4, c5 going forward, and then are there any responses to d4 that make it less closed? Yeah, definitely. I guess the most major ones are things like the one that I like specifically, and that I've been trying out. I have a few games against A players experts out of this over the board. Is I like this one. This is actually pretty interesting. This gives basically a very open position to both sides. It also is an unusual looking opening, which I feel like gives some practical compensation, but if this opening in particular, this is a response to d4 that makes it a lot less closed. Threats on c4, threats on d4, and things are things are pretty good there. So that's what I would say. This is an option that makes it a less closed opening. Cool. So, what are basically what are the other ideas here? Yeah, so I would just go through and play the Sicilian a bunch of games, have your own games, know what your opponents are playing in general, and basically get a strong basically get strong positions out of it. By process of elimination. I mean, you'll every time there's a new thing, you could do it, writing wise. You could like write down the tree that you're building, and every time you see something new on the tree, keep adding to it. Like that could be a way that you could document it. But yeah, just this process of going through with the engine and going through consistently, I think is a good idea. Yeah, good evening, Ophelion. Thank you very much for joining the stream. But yeah, so here I guess I would say, we're gonna move on to Italian theory, but I think I'm gonna try to go through using exactly the method that that I just recommended. So say e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, and then what does black play? Black has two main options: bishop c5 or knight f6. Those are the two things that black plays. Let's say black plays bishop c5. And then you have a few different options as well. I play d3 here. I think d3 is probably pretty good. D3 is the third most common option, but basically it looks like the top four are playable. Let's say d3. Now knight f6, and then what should white play? You can check the analysis, and you can check the you can check the opening book. And just based on what I know about this opening, I like castling better than I like playing c3. I know that castling versus c3 is not the best. Castling versus c3 is not. It's objectively the same. I know castling's not as popular. d6 is an idea, and then by far c3 is the most popular option. I'm not sure I would play this, but let's pretend this is a game situation. I like playing bishop to g5 here. I don't think this is objectively that bad. I don't think it causes problems. But let's say that I play bishop g5 and have a bad position by move 10. This is the game that I played, and I have a bad position by move 10. Then what happens is I go through and confirm with the engine analysis that the game was, the game really was worse for white by move 10. But I can also go to the juncture right before this and in the opening book and say, okay, well, bishop g5 didn't work, so c3 probably works. So it's basically, this is, I think, how to practically improve your opening styles. But the thing that I would do, that I would pair this with is reading a book like Ideas Behind the Chess Openings, or one that explains at least the very high-level concepts of each opening. It doesn't have to be a specific book on a specific opening. It can just be like, even modern chess openings. Modern chess openings, except you don't actually go through the lines. You just sort of read the beginning of chapter summaries. If you go through and do that, you'll get a pretty good high-level understanding of how these openings work. And then with that in mind, you can basically go through in the games you play, keep building branches out to your repertoire. A way you could, test yourself on the repertoire potentially and this starts to get into the territory where you're like memorizing things. Is you could use the chess tempo chess opening trainer. That I think is going to be that's a pretty good tool. The issue with it is that it's really more about rote understanding or rote memorization as opposed to understanding the openings. So that's why I would say that's a shortcoming of that tool. But used in conjunction with these three things that I'm recommending, basically using this, using this opening book, using this analysis tool like the engine, and then using like chess tempo openings trainer, I think will leave you in a pretty good position, and where you're kind of consistently increasing your memorized lines and your as well as the understanding of your openings. So that's what I would combine those. I would combine all those things. So, I play bishop g5, end up in a bad position, say that's not that great, and then go back to the opening book and see, okay, c3 is there. So I think c3 is there. I don't need to play bishop g5 anymore. Two options, say castles, and here I play bishop g5, and again, but things go badly, and I end up disliking this. I end up disliking my position 3 moves later out of this, out of this opening. First thing I do is I confirm it with the engine analysis, and then second thing I do is I check the opening book. I say, all right, well, looks like there's 60 games, so this is probably playable, but it's way down the list in terms of amounts of games played. So maybe I should be playing either bnd2 because it's fundamentally developing, h3, a4. But there are many other options available for white here. The thing is, bishop g5 is probably a fine move. So it's not as glaring as something else. But let's say, I did something like played knight a3, or some move that is legitimately not as good. In this case, I go into this game, and then I say, all right, well, where's the change in eval? Change in eval is, the change in eval is on move 7 when knight a3 got played. I see the shift. I see it was at plus 4-5. Versus afterwards it was minus 0.4. So I want to definitely identify that as a move that I shouldn't be playing in this opening, and then also try to identify a different move that is an improvement on that. Probably bishop g5 is not bad enough to require this kind of recall analysis, but knight a3 would be. And in the case where I see knight a3, then I can go and check for the shift in eval and look at this opening book and say, oh, well, I guess it wasn't on the list. So, given that it wasn't on the list, I probably shouldn't continue to play it. And you can steer it. I mean, you can play only the Sicilian. So, instead of having the branches be out on move 5, their branches out on move 9, where you're basically like looking at different ways that positions can evolve within that opening that you've already chosen. But I guess this is the method that I would go about learning openings. You can pair it with that memorization tool on chess tempo. That seems to be working pretty well. But yeah, it's basically mostly about understanding something that you would get from a high-level opening book like Modern Chess Openings or Ideas Behind the Chess Openings, and pairing that with this kind of checking analysis. So first, I guess first step is decide whether the opening is right for you by reading through just the words. You don't really even have to go into the positions in Ideas Behind the Chess Openings. And then if you have one that fits the things that you're trying to do stylistically, then you go through this effort to play through the openings and then cross-check it against the engine and the opening book. That's how I would do it. Other masters may have different strategies. I'm not the best opening player among masters. There are many who are better. I don't know what strategies they use, but the main point is to use the tools that are available to you, and basically chess.com offers, and leadchess.com and pretty much every chess server offers some excellent training tools for analysis. If you pair those together, you should be able to put together a pretty good opening strategy. Okay. So the Italian's another game where you're basically, attacking on the king side. It's an open game, which is defined as e4, e5. Any game starting with e4, e5 is by definition an open game. And basically, in the lines that I like playing out of the Italian game, the goal is to basically aggressively break open the opponent's king side. Yeah, no problem at all, Hyperion. Thank you very much for joining the stream. But yeah, so in this situation, I guess what I would play is probably queen to b3. Queen to b3 with threats on f7 are pretty good. Here, black's under some pressure. He can't really play pawn takes h5 because then this bishop gets powerful, facing off against f6. And overall, I guess I would just say, basically, white's going to be able to, exert a lot of pressure and have an initiative here. Maybe knight takes is a good idea, maybe not. But overall, this is a weird game. This game went into a situation in which white's getting attacked and is down by a lot. So I went down a bad line in this opening tree. But anyways, the Italian game that I like to play is one where you play d3. It's the canal variation, and then even sometimes before castling kingside, play g5, knight c3, knight d5. Those are the main tactics available to white here. You probably do want to castle queenside. So like, let's say bishop g5, which I know is not the preferred opening line, but say now d6. You can play something like queen d2 and basically do pretty well out of it. Bishop g4, I guess, is I'm playing the strongest moves for the computer. You could play knight g1 even, but you also could play h3, bishop takes, and then rook to g1. Anyways, this isn't an excellently executed opening. I guess I would do, if I played this and I got into that line, I would go back and look, and c3 is the line that's an improvement here. Knight c3 is also, I mean, it's funny because I've played this enough times, and it's sort of like, I guess I'm not playing what are the engine optimal moves. I generally play d3 and an early bishop g5. The goal is to get an attack on the opponent's king side. That's the main point of the Italian game, and with it, you can get these aggressive attacks where if they go well, that's great, and if they don't go well, then at least you're not significantly worse. It's a very healthy developing structure, unlike basically unlike a developing structure where you've gambited or you've lost material for some extremely aggressive attack. Basically, regardless of how your opponent plays, you're going to end up in a playable tactical position, and things are going to work out well. So yeah, in this opening, I don't know. I guess I would say d3, and maybe bishop. I lean towards bishop g5 over c3. Knight c3 makes sense. This at least is straightforward and developing. On d6, I play bishop g5, knight d5. Everything's good. But basically here, black is black probably is a little better. This isn't necessarily the most objectively good way to attack. But the game basically functions along this this bishop to g5 d8 line and pins that you can execute from the knight on d5. So say here bishop e6, knight here, and either pawn takes or bishop takes. Probably bishop takes is objectively better. You can also definitely play pawn takes here. I've won games out of this that have worked out fairly well. So bishop takes d5 or pawn takes d5 here, and overall, white's got a good, white's got a pretty good position. But yeah, it's interesting. Looking against the computer lines and against the tactical trainer, and against the opening book and the computer lines, I do see better lines. Basically the bishop g5 line that I like so much is probably not as objectively good as it should be. But then I'd have to choose to play a game that I like playing less. So anyways, the important thing, I guess, is to find openings that you like. All right. I want to tie this also into, so that was an Italian game. That was the Italian game that I specifically play. Knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5. We can go through like Evan's Gambit. I feel like Evan's Gambit's going to be seen a lot here. So b4, bishop takes b4, c3, bishop a5, and then like d4. On Evan's gambit, if the bishop plays to b6, this is objectively worse. This basically ends up... This is not Black's best option. Black basically must accept this gambit. There's, a 0.6 difference between the first and second best moves, accepting versus declining the gambit here. Here, White's way up, and here, Black is up slightly. But this is something that you will see against out of the Italian game, or a thing that you can play in the Italian game, the Evans gambit. So yeah, bishop a5, queen b3, d4. Say d4. Pawn takes, knight takes. Or, I don't know, castles. But yeah, d takes c3. It's up to you. So yeah, yeah, so in the bishop's opening, maybe, you could probably try it. I'm actually kind of curious about this. Let's see in the bishop's opening, b4. Yeah. That is in the book. But yeah, I mean, it's an idea. It's not a line that I've ever played, to be honest. I don't like gambits, so it's not like... I've played against it as Black, but I actually don't know it super well as White. I play d3 here. d3, c3, knight c3. And then bishop g5 becomes a primary tactic, h4, g4, h5. But I sort of wanted to get less into what I play and more into lines that I don't know. Castles seems straightforward. d3 is what I play. b4 is surprisingly the fourth most common thing, but I guess that's right. I would play queen b3 here, so... Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense to me, Hyperion. I mean, it's a gambit. Gambits in general, I think, expose you to more risk. I don't really like that kind of volatility. Basically, what I do is I just, I just try to get into a relatively equal playable game, and then have better tactical vision than my opponent. That's the best strategy that I've kind of come up with, and I think it's a strategy that's good. Your opponents up to a relatively high level make major shortcomings in their tactical thinking. So that's how I would recommend you play in general. I'm not a huge fan of gambits, to be honest, but they can be very fun to play. It's just at the highest level, I don't think exposing your game to that kind of volatility is super productive. All right, and then I wanted to go. So that was a kind of abbreviated Italian game primer. But let's take a look at the pawn storms in the Sicilian, because there are some pretty clear, well-made ones. I feel like I should be potentially checking against the master game here, but I don't even think we need to. I think we'll just find one. So say here, this is a Sicilian Alpin. Sicilian Alpin is probably less likely to have this than your average Sicilian, but I mean, the thing is, the thing about pawn storms in the Sicilian is that they're very consistent. Like, if we pick random games out of here, especially random games out of like the Sicilian Dragon, they're going to lead to so say g6 here. They're going to lead to pawn storms. And we can figure out kind of how well executed they are. So here I would play c4 is kind of an interesting way to get an early Maroczy bind. I've seen that line. But knight c3 is the most common. Bishop g7, knight b3. But somewhere relatively soon, White's going to aggressively start attacking. And here it is. So f4, we're getting started. So this is a pretty common tactic, this f4. I guess in terms of knowing when to play f4 as the tactics break versus versus h4 as the tactical break, h4 g4 as a tactical break, like I guess it's sort of done a little bit by feel. But in this particular situation, where the bishop is, stuck on e6, and if you can close this diagonal to the bishop by playing f4, f5, that's probably going to play out well for you. The pawn will probably ignore it. Black will probably be reluctant to remove his g pawn for your f pawn. But here is a very good example of when this f4, f5 tactic might be useful. We could also look at how you kind of can approach this from the Sicilian Grand Prix. So say knight c3, g6, f4, I don't know, either knight c6 or bishop g7, but say bishop g7. And here, you can base, in the Sicilian Grand Prix lines, you actually can play c4. But here, one of the primary attacks is this e4, f4, f5 attack. When you play f5 in the Grand Prix, you're basically using it as an ability to break open this diagonal. One of the main problems in the Sicilian is that basically the light squared bishop can't develop to c4. It faces e6 and d5. So sometimes in the Grand Prix attack, you can develop the bishop to c4 with the idea in mind of playing f5, and then getting that diagonal open. Once the g pawn, so that if black takes with the e pawn, then white gets this open diagonal shot on f7, and if black takes with the g pawn, then he's going to have poor king safety if he ever wants to castle kingside, which he probably will, because black often basically almost always castles kingside in the Sicilian. So this is basically an execution of one of the primary ideas in the Sicilian Grand Prix. I wanted to just give a slot to Grand Prix, or basically pawn storms in the Sicilian, but I feel like an important one to cover is this Grand Prix e4, f4, and then f4 to f5 move, where you're opening up either the knight file and ruining the king's post-castling safety, or the e file, in which case you're opening up the diagonal on the weak, basically opening up the diagonal to the bishop on the weak spot f7. So f5, knight ge7, f takes, and basically this is better for white. I mean, it's good to open up this. See, I was wrong. All right, I view this as being fine for white. It's still fine for white. It's closer to, it's in slightly better for black. But basically, this probably ends up being a relatively early, simplification of this center. But it demonstrates the key, one of the key ideas in the Grand Prix, which is basically opening up this diagonal to the f7 pawn, or opening up the g file to the rook and queen later after the king has castled kingside. But yeah, overall, that's one of the pawn storms that you can see in the Sicilian. I want to take a look at one of the pawn storms in the Sicilian that involves like an early g4 or something like that. I think that's probably more interesting. So, say knight c5, knight f3, e6, d4, pawn takes, and then black's got choice between moves. So knight f6 maybe, knight c3. And basically, pressure mounting on the king side already. I mean, this bishop's oriented towards this diagonal. Bishop's probably going to play to d3. I don't think white should play knight b3. I think white should probably play knight f3 if e5 is played. But e5, I don't know, might not be played considering that e6 was already played, and moving the same pawn twice is a little bit awkward. But yeah, you can see basically these pieces are gearing up for a kingside attack. So this game is likely to involve a and actually I sort of wanted to see a non-castled king here. So like queen d2, castles, and then here you have a bunch of different basically a bunch of different potential pawn storms in this particular line. This isn't a particularly significant line, but I can just tell by the way that white has played this. Basically, he held off on castling kingside, that he's going with the traditional strategy of attacking aggressively with pawns. f4 is good here, g4 is good here, and castling queenside is good here. I wouldn't castle kingside because you might as well castle queenside at this point, and attack with your pawns with the rooks behind them. So yeah, g4 very playable here. f4 will probably also involve g4, but g4 is very committal and demonstrative of what a a kingside pawn storm in the Sicilian looks like. We'll see if depending on who wins this game. I guess this is a draw. I wanted to see one where white basically breaks through, but here ideas like h4. Analysis, it's about equal, but very complicated. This is sort of your classic, like, white's attacking along the king side, black's attacking along the queen side type of game. So I would play, like, yeah, h4, h5, f5 potentially after, like, defending the bishop somehow, either on queen to g2 or bishop to g2. But basically, white's pawn storming on the king side, black's pawn storming on the queen side. And the winner of this game is going to be the person who executes their attack, more efficiently. And black's off to a slightly better start. So yeah, we can go through this line further. I'm curious to see how this ends up getting broken into, but yeah, basically you're sort of supporting this stuff and yeah, moving forward. I'd play c4 here, but whatever. Feel like c4 is better than the book move. Anyways, what I would say is it's an interesting game. But pawn storms on the king side in the Sicilian are common and just a good default attack. It's not the type of thing that you want to do it as precisely as possible, but often just moves like g4, h4, g5 will put pressure on your opponent, and then with good tactical training, you can pick up on errors that they make. So I guess I would make that recommendation for whoever recommended Sicilian pawn storms on the king side. Here's what I would do. I would play a few blitz games where you castle queenside in the Sicilian. So like play like a mainline Sicilian and then castle queenside, and then just try attacking on the king side and see how it goes. I'm going to bet that you will generate a lot of errors from your opponents, a lot of tactical errors that come up. But I think it's a good experiment because, I think the best way to do this is not necessarily just explain it to you. I think just doing it, I think if you do it 25 times in blitz games, you're going to understand how to pawn storm the king side in the Sicilian more by feel. I think experience is really valuable. You can read books or you can get lectures on it, but I think at the end of the day, chess is variable enough that experience is a very important factor in determining what's the best way to do that. I can just say that f4, f5 comes up as a tactic a lot in the Grand Prix attack in the way that I described, but g4, h4 come up more in like Sicilian dragon type situations where you are really trying hard to break open the black king side. And sometimes you succeed and sometimes you don't succeed, but you can get some great quick wins as white out of the Sicilian there. I would just try it. It's tough it's too complicated to explain using general principles. I would just say g4, h4, and pushing on the king side and just give it a shot. See how it goes, and send me the game for analysis, and we can try to look at it. But good tactical training so that you capitalize when your opponent makes errors against your aggressive moves. And in general, it's just the default way that the Sicilian is played at the highest level. Just launch an attack on the king side, and frequently at club level that will win for you. Be accurate and be careful and have good tactical training, but that's what I would recommend there. Anyways, thank you very much for the suggestions, everybody. Always happy to give more time to opening study. I think that that is really interesting stuff. I learn a lot from it because I have to learn things that I haven't necessarily played in my chess games. But it's really good. Thank you very much for sending those ideas. And yeah, I think maybe going forward, I might want to move more towards ideas as opposed to games. I'm still very happy to do both. But I think I might be more helpful, in the big picture if I switch over to ideas as a general concept. I'll learn them too, to be honest. I think it'll be really helpful because there's many pieces of chess where I know that I'm just scratching the surface in terms of knowledge. So yeah, if you guys have ideas for openings, that's definitely something that could be a good direction for us to go forward in. It would be really helpful for me. It would be, I think, really good as content that everyone from the stream could, basically enjoy equally. Basically, it would help everybody on the stream equally, right? As opposed to having games that are specific to one person. But I'm happy to review games too. Games have very generalizable concepts as well. But I'm just thinking that might be a direction that might be more, broadly, more helpful to people whose game it isn't that we're reviewing. So I'm thinking that might be a way to go, like just suggestions for lessons material, and then I'll prep it and then go through it on the stream. I think that might be the best. I mean, I'm happy to look over games as well, but that's just a general idea of where I think it might be helpful to take this. Anyways, on to the next game. Next game was Tarash's game. We can take a look. And let's see. Tarash has a King's Indian game with an early E3. We'll take it from Black's perspective. And yeah, I guess all right, so it's a King's Indian game, and this is something where if I was playing white here, so, fitting into how to learn openings, if I was playing white here and I played E3 and I had a game that didn't go well for me, I would say, all right, so imagine I'm in this situation. I play D4, which I know is fine, and then I play E3 on the second move against Knight F6. And then I say, okay, well, that game didn't go super well for me, so I'm going to look, was E3 very common? And the answer to that, I would say, is no. It's, played once out of every 500 games or so in this situation. So it's definitely not a popular or well-established opening move. And then on the other, and then basically on the other side, I would look at, all right, well, what are the, what are the engine optimal moves here? What does the engine describe as my best choice? And C4 gives plus 5.5, NF3 gives plus 0.47, and E3 isn't on the list. And if I play E3, then it gives an eval that's pretty close to equal. So this should be a tip in this situation. That E3 probably isn't the best choice. I would go instead with like Knight F3, Bishop E2, something more that fits better on the metrics of what is the engine suggesting and what is the opening book suggesting. The combination of those two, I think, is where you would go if you feel like you've made an opening error. Okay. That said, we're playing this game from the black side. B6-2 is another opening move where using that metric you might want to reconsider, but this is fine. They openings, especially on the first few moves, are transposable, so I wouldn't be too obsessed with that. But I think that's the correct way to analyze what you're doing in your openings theory, is just basically check check what's going on and make sure that what you're doing makes sense. So yeah, so bishop to d3, bishop to b7, castles, c5, c4, bishop e7, knight c3, c takes, and here what's the situation? I mean, basically black has good development of his light squared bishop, which is unusual in a d5 game. But was sort of the direction that black was steering in for from playing b6. Other ideas, I guess I would say I don't know, d5 maybe. But generally I would just keep pushing the situation forward. You've got both sides have good development. It's just a game at this point, basically. It's a a comfortable middle game. But I want to take this back to the actual game. So white is looking. I don't know. White's looking a little bit weird here. This with e3 this early, you're really stopping yourself. You're really stopping your dark squared bishop. The dark squared bishop can be a helpful piece in queen's pawn games, like specifically the London system. Bishop f4 is a good piece for white in the London system. So when you play e3, you're taking what can potentially be a fairly good piece out of the game. I guess I would say c4 is good, or c4 is a potential move for white that white could play in this situation, but yeah, e3, e3 just isn't as good as other moves. I think it fails on the metric that I described for choosing openings. After engine eval, it leads in a bad direction. And then paired with knight c3, another move that would fail on that that opening theory thing. So let's say we're playing white here, right? White using the metric that I described is fine playing knight f3. I bet that's fine. That was the most common move. But here, you're looking at white and you're playing white and you see that the game went badly for white. So, you played knight c3, and you see the eval shift. So you have this eval before you play it. You have plus 0.5. Then you play knight c3 and have the eval go to minus 0.3. And then you check the opening book as well. You say, all right, well, that seemed to be a pretty rough. Yeah, thank you very much for joining the stream, Johimi, and I hope that was a helpful explanation. That's my recommendation for learning openings. But yeah, hope that's helpful, and thank you very much for the idea. I think these more general lessons I think could potentially be a good way to go forward with things. But yeah, thanks Johimian for being here, and thank you for the ideas. So yeah, really appreciate it. Interesting stuff. I guess I would say, thank you very much for the subscribe, Jen. That's very nice. Jen subscribed. Jen is my girlfriend. It was very nice of her to subscribe. I guess she got an ad or her thing went. But anyways, I guess I would say, what can you do here? Bishop d3, c4, these are the most common moves. So I guess I would say here, knight c3 is way down the list. So basically between the metrics, the eval metric that changed, knight c3 going negative, and the and basically the opening move being very uncommon, that should lead you to the idea that this opening is not particularly good. So, how do we, so now white's made these errors, and they, on white's next analysis, he should catch these issues, but he didn't, so, now we're sort of in a middle game that favors black. Okay, pawn takes, queen c7. Here, an improvement for white. I definitely would defend the c7 or the c2 pawn here. It's getting attacked directly. G3, defends h7, but that's not really at risk right now. So, so I would play knight to c3 here. I think you do, as white, need to defend against that that hanging c2 pawn. If you don't, this, basically black will seize this open file, and that will be difficult. So I think knight to c3 was an improvement on this. But basically the game's coming down to tactics. I want to steer clear of the tactics here. I want to just take this from the opening theory perspective. So what I would do here is e3, and then I played e3 on the second move and I lost. So I'm gonna go through this this game and look at what I can do better. First step, I look at the opening book and say E3 is way down the list, played one out of every 500 games, probably a good sign that I shouldn't be playing it. Then I'm going to check the eval of that versus my best move. With best move here, white's up 0.6. With E3, white's down. Yeah, steer clear of the tactics in my analysis. Do lots of tactics for yourself, but I can't teach tactics. You have to do the training on that one, is the logic, Jen, behind that one. But yes, thank you for making me clarify, Jen. Always helpful. But yeah. But today we were actually, someone was curious about how to learn openings, and I just wanted to go through and do the process. So let's say I played this game as white. So E3 fails the opening test. C4, and basically you get an eval plus of like 0.5 or something, versus E3 where you get an eval that's roughly equal. It's also much less common than many other options. So that would be a move that you would remove from your opening repertoire. You would say, whatever I do, I'm not going to play, E3 on the second move again, because I know that that's objectively worse than the best option, and I know it's something that, is not a very, basically not a very popular line. These lines can be used as a surprise attack, I guess, but they're, in terms of your main repertoire, you should not be including those. Okay, knight f3, bishop b7, and now we sort of transposed into something that's more common here. So like, this structure could occur. E3 is so passive for white, but say it is. Then, you play knight c3. And on knight c3, the eval shifts from plus 0.35 to minus 0.3. So big shift there, and basically, things get a lot worse for white after knight c3. So when I'm reviewing the game afterwards, I say I play knight c3, and then see the eval shift. So that should be the first tip. And then I check the opening book and say, all right, well, there was about 500 games here, and only one of the 500 was knight c3. So probably I should look at one of the more common moves, like bishop d3 or c4, and basically just use the idea of what's objectively considered best by the engine, and what's objectively and what's basically objectively played the most in the opening book. And then once you have a repertoire that you're comfortable with, you can use that chess tempo tool I was talking about, the chess tempo openings trainer. That works pretty well. But knight c3 in this case should be another move that you remove from your repertoire in this situation. You say, all right, well, if this is the structure for white and this is the structure for black, should I play knight c3? And then in this, using this opening book check and this engine check, you say, no, I won't do that the next time. Okay. In terms of tactical improvements here, basically white has played relatively passively. So, bishop takes a6, I think, was not a great idea. This trade doesn't really help white in any way. It sort of just moves this bishop out to a6 and trades this, basically white's good squared bishop for a knight on a6. So, the knight on the rim has fewer squares that it can move to, and both of them are occupied. So overall, trading this bishop, which can be used for a lot of good purposes, for this knight on a6 is probably not a wise positional move. So I would play like bishop to d3 here maybe, or e4. But pushes in the center, pushes, just try to advance, try to improve your position and make sure the trades you're making make sense. I also like queen e2. Queen e2 threatens bishop takes a6, basically forces knight b8, I think, from what I can tell. Yeah, so queen e2 is a good tactical shot here, and an improvement on the bishop takes a6 immediately. So play queen e2, that would be an improvement for white in this game. Now black's got an edge, and after queen takes c2, black's going to have a bigger edge. So I'd play knight c3 here. This queen c2 pawn must be defended, so play knight c3. The queen takes the pawn, And now, I think just white's in trouble. Basically, this is going to work out badly for white against black. And ultimately, this is what happens. It comes out to a check. It slowly moves from a -3 to a -6 to a checkmate. So in terms of improvements for white, the idea of weeding things out of your opening book is a good call. It's a good idea. In terms of ways to advance this, bishop takes a6 doesn't make too much sense as a trade. It's a good bishop and a mediocre knight, so you probably shouldn't trade the two. Neglecting to defend the c2 pawn. And both of these, I think the first one is positional. I think understanding why this bishop is better than this knight is important. The bishop can be drawn to d3 and have a lot of squares that it's having control over, whereas this knight is basically not capable of moving anywhere except back to b8. So just based on the two pieces' relative mobility, you should be able to tell that the bishop shouldn't be, that shouldn't be traded for that knight. Queen takes c2 is a tactical error. So play knight c3 as a defensive move here. Pretty basic. This is just a tactical thing. You have to identify that this c2 pawn's being attacked, and then when you see that it's attacked, play knight c3 in front of it, and then it's not getting attacked anymore. So that ends up being better for white. Cool. So yeah, I think this is really interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting situation, interesting game, I think putting in the framework of how would I improve that opening is helpful. I might go through that as just like a check on further openings that we take a look at. But I think that's that's a really good manual way to go through it. Just use the opening book, use the opening book, use the engine. And then if you need to memorize, use that tool on Chess Tempo. But that's what I would recommend. I think that's a good general way to go about it. All right, now we have Sam Sejwani's game. Thank you very much for sending it, Sam Sejwani. And it looks like it went pretty well for you. This is a big gap between relative evals, and we'll take a look. It's a quick game, I think, and looking forward to seeing it. Okay. Frankenstein Dracula, I think, what's this called? No, Frankenstein Dracula is bishop c4, knight f6. This, I don't know what this is, or what this is called. But okay. Bishop c5, early queen f6, b6. And here, yeah, nice. Cool. What do we think of this opening in general? I think knight takes e5 is good. This is a good improvement. Basically, this is white's best move here. I don't think there's any other move that are nearly as well reviewed as knight takes e5. So knight takes e5 is good. You see it, queen h4, and now you're in sort of a difficult situation because the queen is attacking you and he's threatening checkmate. You have a real question, like how do you best prevent problems coming? Black has played kind of a very early attack against you, and you need to be careful. So the threat is queen takes f2. The first step is identifying what the threat is. Queen h4 is also interesting because it threatens e4, or to take e4. And that the combination of those two is a fork, and it gives you relatively few moves, I think, that prevent the fork. Queen f3 is one. If you move queen f3, then it defends both the f2 pawn and the e4 pawn. If you play queen e2, then you defend the f2 pawn and the e4 pawn. But I don't see any other moves that will be helpful there. In the big picture, what you want to do against openings like this is you want to be sure that you develop normally while your opponent is developing abnormally. So your opponent is playing moves like queen h4, which don't really advance his position, and they don't follow general opening principles. So what you can do to really make queen h4 a problem is play standard opening moves. Here you have to, just because it's necessary, you have to play queen e2. Because that's the only move that defend queen e2 or queen f3, because those are the only moves that defend against this fork. But in general, what you can do to refute queen to h4 is just play general standard opening moves. Things like knight c3, knight f3, and basically white's going to be fine. Thanks, Jen. But yeah, queen f3, queen e2, queen f3, and I think basically white's going to be fine. I don't know. So queen e, but I think that fork is important. So queen f3 I think is good. You needed to make one of the two queen moves to defend against both of those forks. Knight c3 is needed because on this move you can count the threats. You see, black has 2 attacking pieces and white only has 1 defending. So you play knight c3 and now you have 2 defending, and that's good. b6, okay. It seems like white wants to bring his bishop in so he can attack you on the e4 square. g3 is good. That threatens this queen, right? The queen's gonna have to find a place to go, and you've managed to move your pieces forward by attacking the queen, which is a reasonable thing to do in a situation where your opponent's played the queen out so early. Bishop takes f2. You can just play queen takes because your e4 knight is defended, pawn is defended. d4, and you've got the discovery on the queen. Great move, d4. He basically missed this discovery on the queen, so he's likely to lose the queen. And bishop takes g5. You're good. White got a lot out of this. I mean, this is this ends up being a win. So in terms of what was going on in this game, you played knight takes e5, which makes sense, and then your opponent played something extremely aggressive. You played a move that defended all of your opponent's threats, and did that twice. Then you moved your pieces forward to threaten the queen, and then your opponent hung a piece, and then you took his queen. So overall, you didn't really have much of an opportunity to improve. That's great, Aphelion. Yeah, no, thank you very much for, it's a great book. I mean, it's really a classic, and I have some very old edition. I probably have an edition that's written in about 1920. But yeah, cool. That's funny, Jen. Yeah, always good with me. We're getting pretty close actually to we only have one more game. So it was a quick night tonight, to be honest. Yes, with the old style descriptive notation. Yes. That is yep. That's the version I have. Now they probably do have one with algebraic notation, but the main thing that makes that book good, Aphelion, is you can just literally read it like a book. You don't have to play through all of the positions. Like, you can try doing the opening books stuff in your head. But yeah, cool. Yeah, no, the at least the one I have has descriptive notation. Yeah, I guess what I would say is in that book, basically you can read each section individually, and it's not super time consuming, and you don't need a set in front of you. You can just read it like a book, and it will tell you kind of what's going on in every opening. It's very helpful in terms of going over, games that are in openings that you're not familiar with, and knowing at least kind of what people are going for. So I think you'll really like that one, Aphelion. It's a good book. It's well well done with that. Serves that purpose very well. But yeah, thank you for sending the game, Sansarjwani. Very good game, good win. And I think basically you deal with your opponent's very aggressive early attack well. You will run into opponents who attack this aggressively, and coming up with a way of defending accurately against their attacks is something that is a good step moving forward. Like, you definitely need to be able to do that to a degree. So thank you very much for sending it, Sansarjwani. Please keep sending games. Yeah, interesting. interesting, good general instincts and good calculation. You get a solid 95% eval on that, and yeah, you played it accurately. That's what the eval should be. So good work, Sam Suzwani. Thank you very much for sending it. Please keep sending games. They're interesting, and if you have anything in particular that you'd like me to focus on in any of your games, I can do that too. But overall, yeah, thank you very much for sending it. Appreciate it. And now we're on to the last game of the night. That's Emiskis. And here, yeah, cool. Yeah, no. I think it's exactly that, Aphelion. I think you'll like it. This one, yeah, it makes sense, and it's a good book to read if you have, if you have a little bit of free, a little bit but not a lot of free time. You can get a lot of chess understanding really efficiently with that one. Okay, cool. So. Now, what should white play against this? So this is the Scandinavian. This is interesting. Knight c3 is the second most popular move here, but I think probably way worse than the first. I would take knight c3 out of your opening repertoire on this. I think knight c3, which immediately gives black an advantage, is just too much. The Scandinavian is something that's good for white. So if you can just play it, either with knight f6 or queen, or knight f6 or queen takes d5, white's gonna have a pretty solid position. It basically, I would say it doesn't pass my my opening test, which is the eval good, and it's like a point worse than the first one, and then is it often played, and it's played, I don't know, looks like about 3% of the time. So I would steer away from knight c3 and go with e takes d5. That said, there's enough games out of knight c3 that you can definitely play it. So now we're in sort of an interesting thing. You can transpose it to the Caro-Kann here, but it looks like you went for the King's Indian attack. This is interesting. I don't know it super well. Interesting. This one too, but I'm gonna do this. I think I'm gonna do this opening analysis. How to learn openings going forward, because I think, yeah, knight f3 or d4. D4 just transposes into the mainline Caro-Kann. But all of these are good, I think. So yeah, d3. And basically, yeah. So here's a missed tactic. So this one I think is important to take take account of. You basically have a great opportunity after bishop to f4. White has better pieces. e5 is going to be a response, but black doesn't play e5. And here you actually have knight to c7 available. So this is a pretty serious attack. Like knight c3. King d8 or queen takes, but king d8 doesn't lose the queen, and then knight takes a8. I think basically, this is the kind of thing that needs to be, this is the kind of thing that you would benefit from for sure. Yeah, knight to b7 looks like a win to me. So tactics, tactics are just really important. Tactical study, that's where it's at. With this, you're in a good place. So knight to c7, and you are very close to winning this game. You have another shot at it too, but I think knight to c7 is the the opportunity that I think you really would benefit from seeing here. I think tactics are great. I'll pull up the book that I like because I think it's a good one for players under 1300 or so. I would just go through and make sure that you've, just go through it a couple times. But the Chess Tactics Workbook, this book is great. It's a really good way to learn tactics kind of the old way. This is a book that I think will be, helpful to you if you're interested in looking at it. But yeah, whatever route you'd like, either chess tactics or either basically chess tactics through chess tempo, or puzzle battle or puzzle rush. Whatever works is really the best idea. But I think it's something that you need to do to move forward. This in this position, you've played a reasonable opening. It was fundamentally correct. And then yeah, so c5, bishop d2, knight b6, and basically white's in a good place here with good tactical execution. Knight to c7, like if you just took this not as a game, but you just looked at this as a puzzle, I think you would be able to see kind of where the what the solution to the puzzle would be. So just like forget it's a game for a second and just take like this position in. I think you would be able to figure it out as white. Why what the solution is and why it's the best. So knight c7, and I think you're basically good here. It's a good fork. Forks the king and rook, and basically yeah, I think you should be in a pretty good place. But this is something that you definitely need to catch. If you don't catch this in a game, it's too much to be missing. So I'm just gonna steer you towards tactics. The rest of the game I think looks fine. Eventually you played knight to c7, but which is great, and you got the tactic. But I think seeing it the first time is probably pretty important. This is great, and you end up way ahead and material ahead. Yeah, this ends up, you end up getting a cool looking mate in the center of the board. So definitely, definitely you came to a good position tactically at the end of it. But I think the next step for you going forward is to really make sure that you can find the tactical opportunities that are available to you. Like if you have a if you have a move that wins 6 points, yeah. Yeah, no. So I think yeah, you learn a lot of patterns, and I think you do definitely get a good sense of what to do. I think you're sort of at the level where it's just like reinforcement, right? Like I think the answer to this puzzle, right? Like I think if you got like a worksheet that had this puzzle on it, you would look at the position for a minute or two, and you would, say, oh, it's knight c7, which forks the king and rook. But you haven't yet looked at it enough times, I think, that, you haven't yet looked at it enough times that knight c7 is like, you see it instantly. So that's really where you want to be. You want to keep doing those puzzles until you can clearly recognize that the move here is knight c7. And then on knight c7, you play knight takes a8, and king d8 is, you have a follow-up threat on the knight on b8, but yeah, here knight c7, king d8, knight takes a8. That should be a win for white, and I think this ends up being this is an opportunity for you. So I think you really should do, I showed the chess tactics workbook. I think that's a good one if you're just starting out or relatively early on. And then after that, I would try to I would try to move on to more complicated things. But I think even chess tempo has a thing where if you just keep doing puzzles on chess tempo, it'll eventually get to the ones at your level, and then you can just go from there. So chess tempo tactics training, I think, is a really good choice for you too. But tactics training, I think, is a necessary next step here. I can explain openings and I can explain general concepts, but I think if you really want to improve effectively, your best strategy is to play play a lot of chess tactics. I think that will really help. So anyways, I hope that's helpful. Thank you very much for sending the game in, Amiski. I think with some tactical training, you're off to a good start. You just kind of have to keep at it. And with tactics training, I think you'll be in a good place and you'll improve quickly. So yeah, thank you very much for sending the game in, Amiski. Thank you everyone else for coming and staying for the stream. And next stream is at 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning. And thank you all very much for being here. Have a good night, everyone, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.